Okay, so with the Y-wing now all together, it's technically all built, ready to go. We can just get on with those final stages. And to be honest, this is the one where you can let your creative juices flow. You know, at the end of the day, it's sci-fi. You can do what you like to it. You know, at the end of it, it's your model, your rules, and there is no rules with sci-fi, which is the nice thing. So we've kept this, as you know, pretty clean. I know it's a bit difficult because I've got it on a thing now. All right, so what we've actually got is chipping work going on down here. I don't know if you can see it. We want it to be quite subtle. We don't want it to be outstanding too much. All right, so what we've got is just little bits going on. And again, as you move it, it should catch. Now we are using for this straightforward silvers and colours just like that. So for instance, we've got down in here a little bit of SM203. I think the super metallics, to be honest, for a straightforward out of the bottle, shake it and brush it, this is probably the best you're going to get for a nice sort of metal finish. But we're not only going to use that one, we're going to use other ones as well. So we've got this one we've been using a lot, which is another lacquer one, which is LP-61, which is that metallic grey, which is really dark. So between both of these, this is what we're going to build up our chipping. And again, we've done chipping before. I've shown it many times. So we've got things like using sponge. So tear sponge, get some nice crinkly edges with it and stuff like that. And again, you tear bits off and then you can come in and you can literally just scrunch it up a little bit into a bit of a ball on something just like this. All right, so once you've got this in, and again, you can then just dab it. And I tend to use a lid or just a top or a, you know, bottom of a bottle as we got here. And then I'll put it in and then we just dab it in and we start to dab it in very lightly. That way it's nice and random. Also, other things I use is this stuff. So this is like high density foam, really strong stuff. But again, if you come in and you grab it with a pair of pliers, all right, like this, and you physically can get hold of it and tear it, you can rip it. Again, once you've ripped it, you get quite a nice sort of rocky type texture with this. And again, this is great for doing chipping as well. So you can actually come in there and use edges and little blocks and points with it, and you can just pop around and put some of those in. All right, so if I just show you a couple of examples. All right, oh god, oh okay, so if you didn't realize what just happened, I went to pull off the top and the lid got caught, and as I went to pour it in, I tipped it completely over myself. So yes, anyway, I will just point out IPA cleans up what you think is lacquer based paints. Most of them are alcohol based, so always have plenty of tissue around and obviously have plenty of just stuff you can grab, and then you're okay. But luckily we haven't destroyed the cutting mat either, because the paint went all over the turn. It literally went off the edge here and then tipped down. I caught most of it. And as I say, the carpet's come out all right. I've just got one spot on my slipper. So yeah, we've managed to dodge that particular bullet. So where were we? Okay, so obviously I literally just threw everything out of the way. So we've got all of these different little techniques and tools, and I'll give you, this thing's covered in thinners still, a few little ones we'll show you. All right, so what we do down here on the front of it. So again, try this very much again. We're just going to take a few drops, not tons of silver, and we're just going to put it onto the cap just down on here, and you spread it out a little bit. Now that will dry, but you can rehydrate it all the time with thinners as you go. All right, so all we're going to do, we're going to pick up a little bit of sponge, and we're just going to go to the edge, and we're just going to pick up a little bit on the edge here. Then what we're going to do, I use another bit of sponge and just knock off some, and then you can come in and we can start to put in little tiny shapes. And we're starting off on the areas, so I think it's probably going to be a little bit around the front. All right, so we pick a little bit off of here, then onto the sponge, because you want to knock most of it off, and then just little bits on the front. And we're just going to do some little touches and scrapes without going in too much. And as it wears off, you can be a little bit more wherever you want to go. But again, very quickly it wears out. So again, pick up a little bit, knock most of it off. There you go, we're going to do a nice big splodge in there. But again, you can use just the edge of it just use the edge, the chipping on edges, all these areas. And you'll feel when it's not really doing. Again, with this now we're going to change the side, so I come in from the top onto this sponge here. But it's the lightest touch, very much like dry brushing. It's a slow process. You want to just build up. You don't want to be doing it in one. All right, and that's literally how we're going in and doing it. So if I show you here, camera glazed ball, there we go. I've got those chips and the various things on there just like that. So with those on, the other way you can do it is take said brush, rub most of it all off, then you can come in and just touch, and maybe just edges, little areas, and create little patterns, but little tiny, I call it jogging, because you're just tapping like this, because again you want to keep it random. And again, a little bit more paint, not most of it off, and again we're just going to go down in here, and again just do little tiny jabs. All right, so what we'll do is we'll just a bit more light on the situation here. There we go, it's better. And again, just going to pick up here. I'm just going to put a little few, just tiny ones, just around here. And perhaps you can join a few up. All right, and you're just adding the minute little taps and scratches. You don't want to be going in here too much and flooding an area. Just like this, you see? And this is how we make these nice warm patterns. And just little bits of chipping. But the thing is, chipping isn't all universally one colour. So you need to, let's move up a little bit more, switch out the colours. So, as I said before, we've got another colour just down in here. So we've got this deeper colour, which is, that's the wrong one. So I threw all the paints off to get them out of the way. This is LP-61. I'll try and do this without getting it absolutely everywhere. Alright, so this is a really dark grey colour, but it works around all these ones that we've got on here. Alright, so we're just going to take a little bit of this. We use the cap over here, so I'm going to scrape a lot of this off. And then again, we can just come in. We can just add scuffs and scratches to the other areas. Again, you might find that some colours work a little bit nicer, some of them not as well, and as you find that out, you can then concentrate on those areas. So again, just a few little scuffs and marks around, but it's nice to have still, you know, don't just pick a colour, because otherwise you can end up with it just looking a little bit sort of two-dimensional. So by coming in and scraping up and scuffing with different shades, you end up with really nice type of effects with it. So again, we're just going to make quite a statement one. And don't forget, if you have got, you know, perhaps a little bit of failed whatever, fingerprints or marks in your weathering, things like that you don't want, now's your time to cover them up. Alright, so again, I'm literally just going to pop around everywhere now, so we're just going to pick out some of these at ledges. And again, you're thinking that edges are probably going to pick up lots of scuffing and scrape marks and all these particular things, but again, I just use this little tappy flicky motions. You're just trying to keep it as random as you possibly can, you know. You don't want it to become too much. You don't want it to become too, you know, doing squares and different things. You just got to try and keep it random, and that's why just jabbing. Sometimes it comes off the brush, sometimes it doesn't, and that's how you're going to get those nice random type marks onto this one. Again, so you can do things like that. Last up, you can use this. So this is that foam. So same thing again. We're just going to grab a little bit just down in here. All right, now this foam is really, it acts like a paintbrush almost. But what you can do then, you can come along and you can literally just put in nice little blocks of chipping and scrapping and various things, and you can get various shapes and the carved, how you've actually put this in here to get various looks. So again, it's just a case of going around. I use a sponge to knock most of it off. Again, you can do quite, you'll be a little bit more precise with this one, because you can see exactly where you're going with it. And then again. All right, the usual thing, don't forget when you're doing this, all chipping, it's one of those things, less is definitely best. So don't go in there doing a lot, because otherwise you can have real problems with it. The other thing as well is that, don't forget, you can come in with oils over the top of chipping to give it that more worn down look. So once the chipping's dry, maybe almost like a little filter right the way over the top, and that can make it all pop and come to life. This is one of those areas now, you just let your creative juices flow, as I call it, and get on with it. And with the smell of thinners around here, after cleaning all of this lot up, I'm going to crack on with this one and see how we get on with it. Okay, so we've got the chipping all going on here. It's all looking very nice. Now I have made a few little gentle changes. So some of these pipes, I've changed the colour. I've gone for a darker colour. I thought it was just looking a little too much sort of silver piping on here. So I'm knocking some of those pipes back now, just trying to take some of the brightness, because to be honest, they're a little bit too bright. All right, so as you can see, I've knocked some of the back. I'm going to do some more. All right, but there's the chipping on the front, looking pretty darn good. And there's the chipping underneath, a little bit more weathered underneath, clearly, as it hopefully would be. All right, so usual things. So what we've done is we've switched over to an acrylic. All right, as we drop another paint, that'd be great. So what we got down in here is a Vallejo Metal colour. Now I'll be honest with you, if you are an acrylic painter, this is where you want to go. This stuff is probably the best metallizer type finish you can get in an acrylic. It's usually very, very easy when you're dealing with lacquers, especially the pre-thin ones. They're absolutely gorgeous, all right? But when you come to using acrylics, they're always just a little bit, yeah, not brilliant. This stuff's actually really good. The only thing is, this stuff doesn't like a few things, all right? First of all, it doesn't like any type of oily finish or a particularly glossy finish. So if you've done anything in lacquers and they're very shiny, like pipe work, all right, or oils, as in this has had a complete oil wash everywhere, this won't like it. But this is where this comes into its own. If you want to use it for chipping and things like that, the capillary action means it won't flow and it tends to bunch up on itself, but it bunches up in certain ways which look just like chipping, so actually it works in your advantage. So what we do is, I'll have the top off, all right, because we'll use everything just in the cap. Make sure, like all paints, but make sure you really, really mix these well, all right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab a little bit of paint on the old brush, all right? So we've got very, very small amounts on here. Let's just do somewhere where you can see it quite well. All right, and then what we're going to do is we'll just take a little bit off. We're just going to come in and we're just going to sort of put on some edging and some little tiny scratches. What you will notice is it doesn't flow particularly well, and what happens, it literally clumps up, but it's great because it gives you a really sort of worn, scraped type effect to things. So when you're coming through and doing little tiny chipping work, or even quite big chipping work, what you'll find is that it will literally just bunch up. So I know it's very difficult to see, so what I'm doing is I'm going to work everywhere just doing this. So literally it's just coming on the edges, little tapping, and with this color is Exhaust Manifold because it's a dark color, all right, but you could use it with anything. So what we got here, if I show you on a pipe like this, all right, so if I come along and we brush this on, you see how it's not covering, but it's giving you a really nice chipped effect. So this is what it does on everything. So you give it a nice little light coat, And then hopefully you can see, if I try and get this right up to the camera, hopefully you can see how it doesn't like to stick, but it gives you a nice chipped type effect. All right, now you can counter that by literally just flooding it on. All right, and that's normally what you have to do with this stuff. So if we do this pipe here, we're just going to go very slowly and a nice big thick coat, and that way it's got enough to cover the entire pipe. All right, so you're just going to go on, and you might need to give it 2 or 3 coats just to make sure it's on there just like that. But if you want to do sort of funny chipping, you can come along with this and you give it quite a bit, and you will notice it will just literally pull up, and it won't like to physically spread. It's got no capillary action at all, and that's why it works brilliantly for doing this type of work. All right, so again, we're just coming down in here. We're just going to do this little offset pipe here. All right, but it is great for doing little bits of chipping and stuff. So if you come in and you just want to do little edges, and because this has got a nice oily type of effect on it and stuff, you will notice it literally just puts it down and then it sucks back into itself. So it's great for doing chipping, especially on big areas. So anything that's on a big area, that will get a nice good chippy coat. All right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around now and give this pretty much some of these pipes different colours. So some of them I'm going to do dark. You can probably see it there, how it's not liking covering at all. So if you just put it on, it will notably come back off. All right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some of the pipes in slightly different shades and colours and things like this, and we're going to use obviously just darker colours because again, just not happy with it. So like this one back here is going to get it as well. This back one, actually I quite like that, that's all right, but this one here is going to get a slightly different colour. But again, by using different mediums, and by that we mean using acrylics and using lacquers and using enamels, you can actually play one off against the other, and it's great because it will aid you in various things you're doing, like we're doing chipping and things like that here. So what will happen is, hopefully, you'll be in a situation where perhaps you put down an oil wash and then you're going to come in with acrylic, so you get nice chippy because the capillary action's not there and it doesn't want to. That works with you, and then it dries back, and then you can come in with other colours, so forth and so on. But it's just knowing how things are going to react to each other. And I know acrylics are great. I've used acrylics for many, many years. I do like them. But again, they don't like other paints, but just use that as a strength instead of a weakness. Normally you think, oh, I can't use acrylics on this because oils, it'll hate oils and it'll hate this and it won't brush and it won't be nice at all. Use that as an advantage because we don't want it to be nice. We want it to like repel it. We want it to sort of fight it all the way, and that will give us a more warm, especially for chipping and things like that look. So it's a really good tip just to know how different things act to each other's. Lacquers tend to cover everything, so always use lacquers first and that, but for weathering and stuff, if you use acrylics last, you can use them to their advantage. Okay, so Chippy is all done and completed. So it's very heavy, this. There we go. That's it, pretty much done. So up on the front, you can see, so using different tones and shades of it. So we've got these darker ones. This is that exhaust manifold colour. Then we've used steel and various other shades right the way through, as you know, onto this one. Just brings it to life. And then underneath, you can see we've done some quite big ones and some very light ones. And again, it's all about depth, adding different layers. This front end round in here, getting those edges done and everything. And as we work underneath, you can see we've changed the colours of a lot of the pipes. Some of them we've still left originals, but some of them we have changed out. All right the way through and over on the nacelles. And again, camera plays ball, there we go. And then again, right the way over. And then the R2 unit, I'll be honest with you, this is one of those ones where, yes, it's not gone exactly to plan, purely because I painted him up, and to be honest, because I just wanted it for the Friday show, I just did it in Posca pen. So Posca white, and to be honest, the Posca green isn't brilliant, it's a bit like their red, so Sharpie. All right, and I've put him in, but he's now welded in and I can't actually get him out. I've pushed him in too hard and I physically can't get him out. I'd have to get pliers in there and then I'll damage him. So I've left him in situ really, but that's it. Just to weather him in, he's had a little bit of oils right the way, which is still a little bit wet. I will buff it out in a moment just to bring him all to life. And then again on this side, nicely on the close-up, and you can see we've worked it all the way through. And that basically completes the actual build. So again, really nice. Again, it's one of those things like how far do you go to weathering, and you could just keep going and going and going. And I'm put to that point now, I'm thinking I'm beginning to overweather this, so I've stopped. And again, it's one of those things where I'm as guilty as a lot of people out there who probably overweather more than actually is. But in sci-fi, well, doesn't matter, who cares, you can go to your life to it. But literally I'm thinking, yeah, I'm running out of areas to weather, so that's always a clue. So I thought, right, we'll walk away from it and we'll stop right now. So technically that is the build now done with the Y-Wing. So what we've got over here, as you might have seen on the Friday show, because I've mocked it up, I bought a plinth. And to be honest, I bought it for Amazon. It was 20 quid. It's not black wood or anything else like that. It's just whatever it is, and then it's been painted. But it's done to a really nice standard. And to be honest with you, by the time I've gone out and got round to bits to do it and all the rest of it, and the mess, 20 quid, I didn't think it was too bad for it. Also, I've decided I'm not actually going to sort of run in and do a little bit of a base on it and all the rest of it. I was originally, but I'm actually thinking one of the big troubles with these is where do you put them? You know, they're quite big, they're bulky. So I'm actually thinking then what we can do is we can come in and use this stand for other things. And I've got another 3D printed project. I've started printing it off. Shall I give you a little clue? There you go, you get one clue. That. It's been printed off and all ready for it. All right, so I've got to do lots of work on that one, so that'll be something that's going to come down in a few months time. But down on here we've actually got the pole. I'll get this out. We've done a little bit of acrylic rod, and literally all we've done is just taper it in just a little bit at the end here, because obviously that then needs to come into here and marry this in. So again, and what I've done is I've tapered it so once this is in and pushed in, that's in there solid, absolutely solid, and is not going to go anywhere. And you can tell by the depth of it, it goes pretty much right the way through the entire vehicle, which is quite nice. 10mm hole down at the bottom, and then literally it just slots in just like that. All right, so it sits in there very nicely. Let's square it up a little bit. There we go. All right, and it fits in there just like that, and it gives us a really nice type of look. Now if we want to bend this and maneuver it around to different angles, luckily I bought in bulk 10mm rod because it's pretty much universal for anything in 1/48 scale for jet exhaust, so I've got lots of it here. So I thought we could bend it in different shapes and patterns. Again, I quite like it just in the flat from a room point of view and taking up too much room and all the rest of it, but I still like it to somewhat be, I'm thinking I can get this off just maybe at a slight angle just to show it off a little bit more. So what we'll do is we will heat up the actual acrylic well away from the resin because we don't want that heating up, and obviously we don't want to scorch the wood. So we'll do this off, and we're just going to slightly put in roughly around about a 10-degree tilt and pull. So roughly 10 to 15 degrees, no more than that. I don't want it like scooting for the stars and all the rest of it. Just slightly off so you can actually see underneath it if it's on a rotating stand or anything else like that, rather than just having it flat. I think it looks a little bit more three-dimensional. So usual thing for that, we're going to get the hot air gun out for it, and then we'll actually get it seated up, get it down in here, bend it into shape. We'll show you how to do that one, and be ready for mounting it up for the final review. Okay, so we've got the acrylic rod. So this is 10mm acrylic rod straight away, and roughly it is full length is around about 16 centimeters. All right, but then take off a centimeter into this, and I think it's about 2 centimeters in there as well. So roughly you're looking at around about, or I don't know, what we're sort of saying in there, around about sort of 12 centimeters of actual rod height. And I think that's a good height on here. The thing is, you don't want it too tall, because otherwise it's going to be very top heavy, and obviously it's a lot of weight on a thin bit of acrylic, and obviously it puts a lot of pressure down here on this joint. It's lower, it's not going to be as much sort of lateral movement into it. Okay, next up we've got hot air gun. If you're using one like I tend to use it, always get one with a flat bottom base that's designed for. The intakes are actually on the sides, not underneath, so don't use like a hairdryer. This one has got a flat handle on the back as well. It's designed to sit, and it's also got a permanent trigger, so you can leave it running just like that. You can get them, obviously this one came with it, it's got different shapes for heating and bending, but really for what we're doing, that you could just use something like this. The big thing to remember, that gets very hot, so will this as well, all right? But what you want to do is heat it gently. If you put it too much heat too quick, it will blister the outside, all right? And if that blisters, it's very hard to get it back, all right? So when you're doing it, you just want to be in a situation where it's like, right, okay, gently heating it over time, and it will then obviously bend. You can put this entire thing in the oven, and we've shown it in various videos back in the day, where what you used to do is just lay this onto a piece of fabric in the oven on a baking tray, heat it up in there for around about sort of 10-15 minutes at around about 150 degrees, and then it comes out and it's completely floppy, the entire thing. The only thing for that is obviously we don't want it bending anywhere lower, so that's fine. But if you do make a misbend, if you heat it up, hang it upside down and let it cool, it will dry straight again, so that's quite good with it as well. This is one of these things though, patience and time. You're just going to completely let this go. So what we're going to do is we're going to just be placing it over here. It'll get quite noisy and I'll do some editing because it'll take forever. Just gently rolling it on the end just like this. When we see this start to droop and start to pull, we know we're getting close. We will still continue to do it. Once that's like it, then we can come along and literally take it away from the heat, pop it into here, pop it onto there, bend it into position, and then hold it for around about 30 seconds, and then as this cools, it will then reharden. The big thing to remember, don't pull it if it doesn't want to go, because what you'll end up with stress fractures into it. What happens is the outside heats up, all right, but the inside is still hard, so when you try and pull it, it just cracks. So again, if you want it to have that gorgeous, completely clear look, heat the entire plastic right the way through, all right? And that's just one thing that sort of comes with time. You sort of get a feel for it, but don't even think about pulling it. Put it onto here, and when you see it start to go on its own, then you know you're getting close, all right? So what we're going to do is heat the end, because obviously we want the bend to be just below the actual joint of this sort of physical vehicle itself. So we're going to bend it around about here all the way through, all right, and then when it starts to go, we'll continue to heat it a little bit more. That'll give you more play time to do it. Then we're going to come along, we're going to pop it onto here, all right, and then obviously we can get the model, pop it on top, and then we'll probably have around about 30 seconds to get it into position. Hold it for another 30 seconds and you should have it correct, all right? So again, watch out for editing, because this can take, you know, say smaller stuff like this, it's probably going to take you roughly around about 5 to 10 minutes. Bigger stuff, if you're using the big 20-25mm stuff we've done in the past as well, that can take a lot longer, all right? But just keep moving it as well, even heat. Don't go full heat, so this one's got a 2-stage trigger, so we're just going to go to number 1. And then all we're going to do is just going to keep rolling it. You'll feel the heat. It's not that hot, but it's going to be hot enough for what we need. And we're just going to keep rolling it and rolling it and rolling it. All right, so you just keep it going all the time. Remember, not too close, but obviously you've got to be close enough for it to heat, and you'll feel it starts to warm up quite quickly. But again, don't be into that thing about, oh, I'm going to do it fast. Okay, so we are starting to go. You can probably see we've got a bit of warp. So we're going to go a little bit further. Because what we need it to do is give us some playtime. So that's actually getting really soft now. But we're not going to overforce it, because I want it to be really floppy of its own accord. But it's starting to bend now on its own, which means it's pretty close. But keep rotating it so you get even heat right the way through. And that way you won't get the speckly lines or the fracture lines inside. So now it's starting to really go. So I want it to be a little bit nearer the top, so I can feel where it's bending, and it's bending a little bit low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over here, keep it nice and warm, and then we're going to grab this. That's it, that's where we want it. A little bit more. Okay, pop him on. Pop him on here. Then we can just do to the angle we want it. So I'm thinking roughly around about that. And then literally we're just going to hold it here until we're happy. And again, you can sort of adjust it, you can still sort of pull this around. It'll take a good few minutes to go off. And then if you want to, you can just, actually no, it's trying to go back on its own, so we want it to be in this position. So again, I'm just thinking roughly around about there. And literally let it recool on its own as well. I know some people put it in water, cold water, to get it to go, but it's not like glass. So again, it's one of those ones where you just want to take its time and just let it re-harden and set on its own. So it's not to go now anyway. But again, you don't want to put weight on it either, because you don't want to squash the plastic. So you're sort of just holding it in place as it cools down. And as I say, cooling times, it's quite a while, so you're going to be here for about a minute before it can hold its own weight again. Sometimes if you've really heated it up a lot, you might be a little bit longer. Starting to feel it bite now. That's it. So this is now holding itself. It's probably not got enough to actually hold the weight of it in done, but hopefully you can see the angle that that's at. You look down on the top, you can see the angle. Put it right under the camera. There you go. That's the sort of angle that we've got with it. All right, and that's enough now to dry on its own. It's probably going now. All right, so just remember that's very hot, so we're going to unplug and then we'll leave it over here next to all the flammable things before everyone says. True, it should be okay. In fact, what we'll do, we'll pop it over here so we don't burn the place down. Alright, so that's pretty much it. So what we're going to do, this, when it goes cold, then we'll reattach it onto it. But hopefully you can see we've got no lines or crystal, it's crystal clear. There's no horribles and nasties in here at all. Alright, and that's what you're trying to get. And to be honest with you, like a lot of us, first time you do this, you're just too, you're just bending it and, or will it go? And then as soon as you get little stress fractures in there, really hard to get rid of them. Alright, so you can go through. If you want to get rid of this bit as well, the actual, the stuff here, what you can do is, and if I can get mine out, if you take a lighter, out of here, you should literally be able to melt these off just a little bit, and it will then just go to a nice look. But obviously if you've got a blowtorch, get a bit of heat on this, you can actually just turn that back to glass, because it will all melt together. To be honest, because it's using, normally I use a blowtorch, a lighter, it's going to blacken it up. We don't want that. But there we go, that's going off very nicely now. So hopefully you can see, there's our rod, looking very, very nice. All right, so we'll let that cool down and then we'll be ready for the final reveal at the end. And there we have it, all completely finished off. Wow, what a journey. I must admit, when I started off with this, being the first thing I've fully 3D printed myself, and we've rescaled it, and so in your mind you've got, well, it should be okay, and looking at the files it looks quite good, but not really knowing exactly what you're going to get at the end of it. And I have to say, I'm blown away. The detail is as fine as you will find on the Bandai one. That's what's really clever. And to be honest, I've been using the Bandai kit as a sort of, a reference, because instructions are a little bit iffy and things like that. So you can look at the plumbing on this and see exactly where it goes. So that was really, really nice. But a lot of the details I've looked on here onto this, and because of the scale effect, roughly this is, we don't sort of nose guys, it's around about 32nd I think, but at the end of the day is that they scale beautifully. And I really do believe if you was to scale this up by another, say 200%, which means it'd be about this big, which I should think is getting near to the studio scale one, then I'm really thinking that, it would just work equally as well. And that is a thing with 3D printing. With 3D printed files and things like that, they scale really, really well because they just generally get bigger. Whereas obviously when sometimes with plastic models and that, when you try and rescale them, it just gets a little bit blurred. This is just as sharp no matter what it is, all right? And I wanted something about this size. I didn't want something too big because it's cumbersome. You know, you've got engine nacelles, which are like, you know, rockets, and it's all of these things where it's just very, very difficult on camera. And that's the other beauty with doing 3D printed things, because on the file, you've got the file for it, and I could do it this scale, which to be honest, there's one on the file set just to do one this size, all right? Or you can then make it anything you want. And obviously it's finite, so you're going to get to a certain scale where it's going to get a little bit blurry when you're getting too big, but definitely you could go a lot bigger this, no problem at all. But again, you could go somewhere in between. And also, because it's a 3D printed file, is that not only do you have ability to do whatever scale you want, you can do as many of them as you want as well. So if you was planning on thinking, oh, I'm going to do a squadron of Y-Wings, then definitely get a 3D file, because by the time you've bought the file, a printer and a couple of other bits and pieces would still be cheaper than buying 10 of these. So very quickly, this can all pay for itself. And one of the biggest questions I've been asked all the way through is like, how much does it cost and all the rest of it? And obviously I've done lots about 3D printing. I've got a new series of 3D printing things going to be coming up with you in the future as well. But as a rough ballpark, this has probably cost me around about, I would say, 45 quid. That was a lot of it is because of some of the errors I made. So again, like I said before, we had to redo these engine nacelles. Originally I did them, they were solid. Don't have to be solid, you can make them hollow. And now I've learned that, and the next thing on 3D printing as well, I've hollowed it fully out. It means it's a lot cheaper to do because you're not using anywhere like the amount of resin you were. If this was just solid resin, it's quite expensive to do. But if it's all hollow, then obviously you're not using much resin at all, so it's a lot cheaper. But then you've got obviously the cost of the printer and everything else. So again, if you was to factor this in, to say you wanted to make 10 of these, it'll pay for itself tenfold. And then you've got a machine that's going to last you forever. And I don't have the latest and greatest 3D printer over there. You know, I've just got the Saturn II, and when it first came out, and now it's been superseded by a lot faster ones and a lot better ones than what this one is, but it does everything I need. And I don't really see the need to go off and buy another printer because it's doing everything I need it to do. At some point it might break, or something might come along in the technology it thinks need to move a step ahead, but at the moment that is perfectly good for what we need. How much is it? A setup like that's going to cost you around about 350 quid. That'll get you actually the machine, the resin, all the cleaning bits and pieces, and a curing station. All right, so that's literally what you need. So you think about how over time it can start to pay for itself, then definitely. The other big thing is, if you're into sci-fi, you know, sometimes we're a little bit limited about what's out there that's physically available for us to model. So if you're thinking things like Star Wars, yes, of course, we've got Bandai come to our rescue, and there's obviously the other companies out there as well, Revell and whatnot. But again, you're quite limited on the scales that are available. For instance, there's no 48 scale or 32nd scale Y-Wings available, things like that. So again, it's one of those ones where 3D printing, go off and get the file, any size you want. And in the sci-fi world, honestly, pretty much anything you can think of is now readily available as a 3D file to print and do it. All right, so from that point of view, if you're into it, it's fantastic. Again, if you're doing multiples of anything, seriously look at a 3D printer and 3D print them off, because they are cheaper. From a build point of view and everything you're doing, actually, what's the difference between these two? Not a great deal. The parts count's obviously a little bit higher because you've got smaller, fine out little parts on this one. But by the time we was to count in all the plumbing and everything that goes in here, there's not a great deal of difference between it. You're still building it. You still need to have some modelling skills to put one of these together. This isn't printed off in a solid lump. You know, as you've seen, this comes in various little stages, all little parts. You need cleanup, you need all the things you would do to a normal plastic kit, you're doing in this. But instead of cutting it off the sprue, you're having to pull it off its own sprues from a 3D printer and do it that way. So from a point of view of like, I've had people say, well, it's not real modelling. Well, I don't know what is then, because I've done everything I would do on this kit. We've cleaned up the resin parts, we've had to sand, fit, glue, fill, you know, everything we would do, rescribe, you know, re-rivet some areas. We've added more detail, a little bit of scratch building. Everything that we've actually done on a normal plastic kit, we've done on this resin kit as well. So from a modelling point of view, it's no different. And clearly, as you've seen, painting and weathering is exactly the same principles all the way through. So from that point of view, this is modelling as much as this is. All right, there is no difference in it. Nobody's expecting, you know, this to sort of replace modelling as it is at the moment, but over time, I can guarantee you in 20 years time, this is going to be the future of what's going to happen with kits. plastic model kits down the line, because I do believe over time the modelling community is getting smaller because we haven't got enough younger generation coming in, and as it shrinks, obviously the demand will shrink, which means the cost per unit will go higher, which then you've got that horrible collapsing ball syndrome, because the cost is higher, people can't afford to do it, means they leave the hobby, so forth and so on, before it literally implodes and becomes really much a niche hobby. Obviously that's the last thing I want to happen, but what can save our hobby is actually 3D printing, because again it's that ability to be able to do anything you like. And as we've seen now over, you know, the literally 6 months, if you go back 6 months, how many 3D printed parts were available for plastic kits, upgrades and stuff. Now you can get almost full cockpits, full wheel wells, full everything you need. Instead of it being cast resin as they used to be, they are now all 3D printed. So you're only one small step away from actually 3D printing the entire kit, because most of all the detail parts, which to be honest are the more tricky parts to do, are all being 3D printed as we speak. So it's only going to be a little bit of time, but that is what I do believe will honestly save our hobby from dying a very slow, laborious death as we run out of people doing it or can afford to do it. So 3D printing is definitely the way forward. So from that point of view, I think it's just as much as part. I'm quite happy to do them and show you guys how to do it and work along with it. And again, the principles of using it is no different from any other modelling really at the end of the day, apart from obviously you can't use world action glues because it's resin. So you're going to have to use super glues or epoxy resins, things like that as well. And to be honest, a lot of modelers use that type of technique as we make our way through. As you've seen, it's been a fun build as well. That's the other thing to this. It's quite exciting actually printing off your own parts and seeing them for the first time on next projects here. And I've been looking at the detail and the parts on sort of, you know, the ring on here and all the rest of it, of how it actually is. And I'm excited to get on with it because it looks fantastic now, and I want to sort of see it come together and the other bits on with it. So from that point of view, it's actually quite exciting to see it coming out of the ground, almost growing out of your resin vat, as well as when we get the box and opening it up and seeing the sprues and the frets for the first time. So from that point of view, it's absolutely fantastic. I do think it is the future, and I can see us actually more and more going on and seeing more and more on the forum, more and more 3D printed stuff coming down the line. It's pretty straightforward to use. I know a lot of people were a bit worried about, oh, how do you use it and all the rest of it. I will do some real idiot proof, because I am an idiot, and if I can do it, anyone can do it, you know, about how to get the best out of your 3D printing and things like that, and how easy it is to do it. So expect some of those coming in the future. It has been a lot of fun, and to be honest, I've always wanted a Y-wing about this size, and knowing that I've actually printed one myself, put it together myself, paint and weathered in it, and it's here, just gives me that slight little bit more satisfaction than buying a kit and doing it that way as well. So it has been a hell of a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, as you can probably tell. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, join me again next time.